We keep falling in and out.
Subhanallah.
If there ever was a doubt,
Subhanallah.
our hearts are so quick to break. At this moment our souls are awake.
Forgive yourself and defy your heart disease. Care for others and give your spirit a release.
We keep falling in and out.
Subhanallah.
If there ever was a doubt.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome to another episode of Moments for the Heart. And I'm your host, Omar Dunlab. And I'm glad you could join us today because if you've been following the series, we've talked about some very exciting things. I hope that I've been able, by the permission of Allah, to really open the hearts and minds of people and get them to see that the heart is really something amazing. It's something very fascinating. It's something that's very exciting to learn about, and there are things about it that we're just beginning to understand. For example, traditional thought, and I briefly touched on this in one of the past episodes, that traditional thought has said that the brain is what thinks. The brain is what reasons. The brain is what makes us accept truth or falsehood or so on. And then they have some other words like the subconscious and things that they throw at you from time to time, all of those things. And we've really, in modern science and modern thought, has kind of neglected the sciences of the heart. But this is something that really is is singularly Western. It's only a Western idea. In Chinese medicine, for example, and you can look this up all on your own. You don't have to take my word for it. You can look it up. That in Chinese medicine, they still study the heart. Really. That if someone comes to them and is complaining of some sort of sickness, stomach pain or something like this, they'll ask him, "Are you angry?" They'll ask him that. They'll ask you, "Are you upset? You know, are you, do you have jealousy of somebody?" You know, they'll address those issues. Because in their mind, you can't rectify the real world without first understanding the ghaib, the unseen world, because the real world comes from the ghaib, which is, again, something we've mentioned in a couple of episodes. And so the point is that the heart is something that is very much a central part of a lot of ways of thinking in the world, and that even though traditional thought is saying that the brain is what thinks and so on, and there's some merit to that, the brain is a part of the whole thinking process, but that doesn't mean that we should just throw common tradition to the wind and ignore certain facts. For example, and you can look this up in the 70s, and we mentioned this again very briefly in some previous episodes, that the heart actually has 70,000 neurons in it. And that the brain will send messages to the heart, but the heart does not always respond. The heart has a mind of its own. And this is just something very unique to the heart. It's a very unique part of the human body. And so, you have to think about these things, that this is that it's not just the brain, that there are other parts of me that are determining things, and this is the way Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created me. And in fact, there's a verse of the Quran that says that the problem with some of the disbelievers is that they're not thinking with their hearts. Now, how can that be? Because in Islam, we know that we believe, it's part of our aqeedah, part of our understanding of religion, that we have faith. We trust Allah for some things. There's some things we can't understand. For example, we don't know the essence. We can't understand the essence or the substance of God, these high-minded things. So we have faith in that. But we have proof also. We have proof of how do we know the Quran came from Allah, right? How do we know that Muhammad is a prophet, right? How do we know these things? So we have faith and we have proof. And you can't have one without the other in our understanding. So someone might see this verse from the Quran and say, well, how can that be? How can the Quran say that you should think with your heart while science says, that we think with our brains? Well, you're ignoring something. You're ignoring the fact that there are 70,000 neurons in the heart, that the heart doesn't always respond to the brain, that if you cut off all of the connections of the heart to the brain, the heart will still work. It will still go on pumping blood and doing its job. Right? So this is something very, very unique, and we can't ignore those things. So we just ask people to be very well-balanced and well-rounded in the conclusions that they draw. Now, we mentioned in a previous episode that Imam al-Ghazali said that the heart is like a well, and that the streams that feed the well are the five senses, the eyes, the touch, the seeing, hearing, and so on. And that these wells can be, or these streams that feed the well can be polluted, and they cause the well itself to be polluted. In other words, what? They cause the heart to become corrupted, right? And this is a fact in our religion. We have to accept that the heart can be corrupted. So what are some things that corrupt the heart? I mean, this is something we should know. I mean, as Muslims and a show about the hearts, we should know what corrupts the heart. Well, I want you to think about something. Think about the days, modern times that we live in. What about music? This is a very touchy issue for a lot of Muslims. Is it haram? Is it halal? And so on. And I don't really want to touch that issue. We'll leave that to the scholars who know better than me. But we can ask ourselves a question. Does it affect us? I think we have to be honest and say that it does. Even science has confirmed that. Science has confirmed that when you listen to music, your blood vessels and so on, they react to it. They expand and they contract, and it can bring about certain emotions and so on. In fact, there was an American philosopher, his name was W.H. Aubin, and he said that music makes you nostalgic for something you've never had and you're never going to have. In other words, what? It makes you desire something that you may not ever achieve. And desire is something that happens in the heart, right? It's something that affects you. So should we monitor our listening to music? Should we look at that? I think that any honest person would say that we probably should. There's an authentic narration of of the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, and it was found in one of the books written by Ibn al-Qayyim al-Jawzi, who was surnamed the Doctor of the Hearts. And in this hadith, the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ narrated a conversation that happened between Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and Shaitan, Satan, the devil, And a conversation that happened between them when Allah expelled Shaitan from paradise. And Shaitan asked Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, what will be my Qur'an? What will be my recitation? And listen to the answer of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, your Qur'an will be music. Subhanallah. The music is Shaitan's Qur'an. Now we ask, what's the significance of that? What do you mean by that? Well, think about it. The Qur'an is something that's meant to affect you. It's something that's recited in a very beautiful tone. MashaAllah, when I hear certain reciters of Qur'an, wallah, it's like my heart is melting. Especially when I understand some of the words. It's very beautiful, right? So this is the purpose of the Qur'an. Well, Shaitan is the great mimicker. He just wants to copy Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He has nothing new to offer anybody. In fact, in our tradition, we say that, it's authentically narrated that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala built His throne, His arsh, over the water. So what did Shaitan do? Well, he came along and founded him another area and put his throne over some water. He's a mimicker, right? So he wants to mimic Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but in a bad way, in a way that's going to drive people astray and lead them off of the sirat al-mustaqim, off of the straight path, right? So one of Shaitan's tactics is he needs his own Qur'an. He needs his thing that's going to be calling people off of the straight path. What is his Qur'an? According to Rasulullah and according to Allah Azza wa Jal, his Qur'an is music. Really. Now, some people may say, well, what if I just listen to a love song and I'm thinking about my husband or I'm thinking about my wife? Really, don't you think there's a better way to appreciate your husband or your wife and think about them, a better way than music? Something that from our tradition comes from Shaitan, that affects you physically. Again, I'm not saying that music is haram, halal. I mean, we could get into talking about nasheeds and does it uplift the soul or cause problems. We'll leave that to scholars and the individuals to decide. But I would suggest that if you're going to insist on listening to music, at least monitor your intake, number one. And number two, at the bare minimum, please, not something bad. Don't let it be something that is drilling a message into your mind, because this is something that scientists, any psychologist will confirm, that the things you listen to, the things that you read, the things that you see, they have very subtle but very permanent changes in your psychology. And that's a fact. That's not something Omar is just saying to try to convince you of a point. It is a fact that it causes changes. So, wallahi, you can check it out for yourself. So what about somebody who's listening to music 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 hours a day, and they exist? The musicians of the world playing music 3, 4 hours a day. The content is questionable. And what is your goal? To incite the passions. Even an atheist philosopher, his name was Nietzsche, he said, in music the passions enjoy themselves, the lusts. In other words, the lusts, the nafs, we would say in Arabic, enjoys itself. And he's an atheist. And he admits this. Really. So it's something that we're in a crisis now, if you think about it, because really these days I can't even go buy groceries without hearing music. I can't turn on the television and watch just news without hearing music. I can't walk down the street, somebody's cell phone going off, music. Shaitan's Quran, playing all the time. So I'm asking, does that pollute the well? I mean, your hearing is one of your streams, which feeds the well, Really, this is something phenomenal, really. That, imagine these people that play music, and not only play music, they play it so loud, I go to some of these weddings, we Americans, we kind of joke about this. We say that if you're going to go to a Muslim wedding, or an Arab wedding, or an Afghani wedding, be sure and bring your earplugs, because they're not just going to play music. It's not just that they play it, they're going to play it so loud, you're going to get a migraine. You're not going to be able to hear the person next to you talking. How can such a person know Allah? Really? If this is what's being pumped into your subconscious, into your heart, into your brain, as much as it's being done these days, how can you know Allah? Really? Because the heart is a vessel. It's a vessel, and it can be full. As someone who's been engaged in da'wah for 8 years, believe me, when I'm talking to non-Muslims, I can give them the most logical, reasonable, poignant, eloquent argument for days, and it won't work. Why? Because their heart is full. It's full of dunya. It's full of music. There's no room for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Really, this is a crisis that the Muslim world and the non-Muslim world is in, and we really need to monitor the streams that are feeding the well. We need to make sure that we're spending time looking at halal, looking at things that remind us of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, listening to things that remind us of Allah, and so on. And this is my advice from me to you. You take it and do what you want with it, inshallah ta'ala. And I'm very glad that you can join us for another episode, and we hope to see you next time, inshallah ta'ala. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
We keep falling in and out, subhanallah. If there ever was a doubt, subhanallah. Our hearts are so quick to break. At these moments our souls are awake.
Forgive yourself and defy your heart disease. Care for others and give your spirit a release.
We keep falling in and out,
subhanallah.
If there ever was a doubt,
subhanallah.
The ultimate fact, if merely in you,
subhanallah.
that Allah's mercy ever look after you,
subhanallah.